Have you ever played a board game with somebody who changes the rules in the middle of the game? Maybe they knew the rules better than you, and you didn't know, and you tried to do something that you weren't allowed to. Or maybe they just literally changed them because they didn't want to lose. That was my experience growing up, the second one, more than anything. I had an older sister. She's a couple of years older than me, and we played board games a lot as a kid, and I can remember the rules being changed in the middle of the game. And then we'd play it again, and the rules would come back around that they had been changed to, and we would play them a different way because that would mean that she would win. Not that I'm bitter or anything like that, but it was the way I experienced board games for a long, long time. I try my best to play by them now, even if I don't like the rules the way they are. And there was this idea of changing, for me, the frustrating part was changing the rules midstream, right? And that's what I tend to talk to the television the most about on Saturdays, is what I feel like the referees are changing the rules midstream. But we'll digress on that another day. In our own lives, I know that that's a point of frustration for anybody. If you were to, we feel like we're playing according to this set of rules, and in the middle of whatever you're doing, your job, raising your family, driving a car, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden the rules change dramatically, and that brings about a point of frustration. Well, as we'll see today in John's letter, in 1 John chapter 2, verse 7, he sounds like he's trying to change the rules in the middle of the game. But really what he's doing is calling the people of God back to the rules that have been around for a really long time. And so he talks about this new commandment and this old commandment, and he's really bringing us back to the summation of the commandments to the best of my understanding of what Jesus says. So let's jump into 1 John chapter 2, starting in verse 7. Beloved, I'm writing you no new commandment, but an old commandment that you had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word that you have heard. At the same time, it is a new commandment that I'm writing to you, which is true in him and in you. Because the darkness is passing away, and the true light is already shining. Whoever says he is in the light and hates his brother is still in the darkness. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. He's writing a new commandment or no new commandment, an old one, and then also a new commandment to us. He's not trying to rewrite the law. He is trying for us to better understand it and apply it to our own lives. Just as when Jesus was asked by the Pharisees, the law keepers, the rule makers, which is the greatest commandment? And Jesus answered them by saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. In these two commandments, the whole law is given. Jesus is drawing them back to the 10 commandments. The first 4, which were all about worship of God and who God was. The last 6 were all about how man relates to each other. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. John is drawing them back to those moments where Jesus said those things, and he is reminding them that they are to love God. That in their life, they are to love Him. He is the light of men. He is the one who gives them light, and in that light they should live. So the old commandment is drawing back to loving God, worshiping Him for all He is worth, because He is merciful, because He is good, because He is righteous, because He loved us first. We're to lean into the old commandment. And the new one isn't much different. It's just a manifestation of God's love in us for those around us. That we're to love others. It is a carrying out of what it looks like for the love of God to not only dwell upon us, but dwell in us and through us. He goes into this idea of darkness and light and how you can't love your brother and be in darkness, and you can't hate your brother and be in light. That the existence of God in us, the dwelling of Him in us, comes out in what we do. We have to be careful how we love others. We should show it in our own lives. We shouldn't hate. We can have a difference of opinion. We can disagree. We can be someone who doesn't really even know the other person at all. Those are all okay things, but hating would be the opposite of love. And that is not what God has done for us, even though He had every right to hate us because of our own sin. And so for us to live out not only the old commandment of loving God, but the new commandment of loving all of those who are in Christ and out of Christ, we have to put into practice the goodness of God. We have to put into practice the light of God in us. We're to be instruments of God's worship in this world. We're to carry on the good news. We're to carry out grace and mercy and love. All of those things of who God, or what God has shown to us. We're not just receivers of the light of God, but we are also light bearers to the world. The love of Christ shines through us. Just as in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says that you're not to take and light a lamp and put it under a basket and hide it, but you're to put it on a lampstand so that all the light will be shown to the whole house. Nor would you take and build a city on a hill and expect it to be dark at night. I don't know if you've ever seen the maps of like the United States during nighttime, where you can see all the cities that are lit up all across, and like from Boston all the way down to south of DC is just one big light along the East Coast. Apple has a screensaver that actually is a satellite view over China and then the Korean Peninsula. And it's really quite interesting to watch it because you go over China and you see sparkling lights, and then you get over North Korea and it's dark. And then you get over South Korea and it's lit up. So there's this empty space that is there. We're to be light bearers. We're to bring out the light of God in our lives. We're to be like those cities that maybe you can't tell from where you are that they're lit up, like being here in Denver. But if you were to go even a mile up in the air at night, you would be able to tell there's Denver. And that little light off in the distance is Salt Lake. And we're to be that. We're to be that not through just showing up at church, not through calling ourselves Christians, not through doing a myriad of things that we would claim would show our Christianity, but we're to do it through the love of our brothers and sisters, of strangers and foreigners, of those who would consider themselves even enemies of us. We're to show the love of God in all that we do, so that we can not just hear those commandments, the old commandment of loving God with all that we can and all that we have, but living out the new one, loving our neighbor as ourselves. Jesus defines neighbor within the idea of the Good Samaritan. And that idea would be those who you would even say you dislike, wish they would disappear off the planet. That's your neighbor. That's who you should love. Those who persecute you, that's who you should love. And we're to do that in our own lives so that the light of Christ can dwell here in this place go on beyond our own lives so that others can not only see us for what God has done in us, but what He can do for them as well. You and I have a choice. We can either dwell in the light and allow light to come through us into the world through our love for others, or we can live in the darkness and stumble around blind. And the blind leading the blind. Last night, Amanda sent me a text and said that there were 2 people with canes crossing Hamden at night. And she said she was bothered by that. And I was like, why? They don't need light. It's dark for them all the time. They've learned to make way through their life like that. But it was really for the seeing people that she was more bothered about. Will they see them? Will they see them crossing? We're to be people who bring about brightness into the darkness that we live in. We've mentioned this before, but 9 out of every 10 people here in the city limits of Denver don't know Jesus. It's a dark place. Are we allowing the light of Christ to shine through us? Not only by our words, but also by our deeds. Most people would measure us who are Christians more by our deeds than our words, because without deeds, our words are meaningless. We should love others. We should love them well. It is a lifestyle of worship that we take on when we decide to walk in the light of Christ. Are we worshiping through our lives? In our day-to-day interactions with those who are around us, are we showing the light of Christ? Are we sharing the love of Jesus to them? And that's what John is calling his people to. And helping them understand. Remember, he's writing to this place where there are people who believe that there's this special understanding that comes only to certain people. But he's saying that no, all of those who love God and who are loved by Him have the opportunity to love others and to therefore bring the light of Christ to all who are around them. We have the opportunity to show God in everything that we do. And so I would challenge you and encourage you and I pray for you that you would love your brother so that the light of Christ can be shown. That you would be living out not only the new commandment that John is giving here, but the old as well, so that there is less darkness around you. And we have the opportunity in our lives to push back darkness. We don't push back by carrying a picket sign and yelling and screaming. We push back by showing love. How are we, individually and collectively, how are we pushing back darkness? One of the things that we're trying to do as a church is reach out to our neighbors and tell them, 1, that we're praying for them. 2, that we would love to connect with them. And so we're writing notes. There's some in the back. If you haven't written any yet and would like to jump into doing some of that, you can. I've been writing out notes myself every week and trying to not just write them out, but also pray for those people by name. As I'm saying, I'm praying for you. I really, literally am praying for them and their families. I pray that God would bless them. I pray that He would show Himself to them. I pray that the light of Christ would be shown in my life, that they would see even a glimpse if they're in the midst of the darkness. That we have an opportunity to bring light into this place, whether it's through some sort of event that is already taking place here or something that we do as a group, as a church. We have the opportunity to shine the light of Christ. It only happens in our love for others. And it's grounded in our love for who God is and what He has done for us. Allow us to be the one who reflects and emits the light of Christ that is within us to the world around us, to where we work, where we play, where we live, to where we go to school, all of those places, how do we show Christ and His love to the world who desperately needs it? I came across an article a couple of weeks ago that it was written from a secular perspective, but basically in this secular perspective, the person said, we live in hopeless times and in a hopeless world. As Christians, we have the answer for that. We have hope in Jesus. We get to bring light into the midst of darkness. My challenge to you would be find ways to do that starting today. What does that look like in your own life? How do you bring light? Is it caring for someone who can't care for themselves? Is it showing respect and honor to those who are your parents or those who are your teachers or leaders or co-workers? Whatever it might be, show the light of Christ in your own life so that God can be glorified in and through you. Let's pray.